Have you ever wondered maybe if digging a bit deeper into the Forgotten Realms lore could, I don't know, take your D&D campaigns beyond just standard fantasy?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because it's so easy to just see Faerûn as like a generic backdrop, right?
Oh.
A convenient place for your dungeons and, well, dragons.
That's exactly. But the article we've been digging into suggests there's so much more hiding just under the surface.
It really makes a strong case.
It does, and that's what we're diving into today. We've been spending some quality time with this fantastic article from LitRPG Reads. It's called Unlocking the Secrets of D&D's Forgotten Realms. Deep lore every dungeon master should know.
And it's aimed right at dungeon masters, basically showing how you can get past the surface level stuff and really use the setting's history to your advantage.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to pull out the most useful insights from that piece. Find the practical ways this truly iconic setting's deep lore can genuinely transform your storytelling.
And keep your players hooked, which is key.
Keep them hooked. Think of it like finding those plot hooks that are kind of hidden in plain sight within the lore itself.
Yeah, we're not just, reciting history here. We're looking for those practical bits, the things you can actually drop into your next session to make it, well, pop.
Okay, so let's unpack this first big idea the article hits on. Why the Forgotten Realms is actually more than just generic fantasy wallpaper.
Well, it uses this phrase I really liked. It calls the realms a living tapestry. Which feels right, doesn't it? It's all woven together with these layers of myth, really complex politics, and just, centuries of stories all bumping up against each other. Unlike some settings that can feel a bit, well, sparse. The realms have this incredible density. There's this resonance, I think, that you feel even if you only know the basics.
You mentioned it earlier, even just hearing the names of places, Waterdeep, right? The City of Splendors. Or Cormanthor, the ancient elven woods, the Underdark, obviously, that massive, dangerous place underneath everything. They feel like they have weight.
And they do, because they do have that weight. The article's main point here is that this isn't just like background trivia.
Right.
Even just scratching the surface shows you this deep history that's baked into the world itself. And ignoring that lore, it's not just missing details, it's missing the setting's unique power to turn a basic dungeon crawl or just another combat into a dynamic story that echoes with history and legend.
It turns the setting itself into like another character in your game.
Exactly.
So, okay, how do we actually start digging into that living tapestry, as you called it? The article talks about delving into the hidden depths of Faerûn.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is the way it frames it, thinking of the continent, Faerûn, almost like geological layers, like sediment built up over ages, holding traces of empires that vanish, the actions of gods, the literal scars from cosmic cataclysms. You've got millennia of stories just embedded in the land itself.
Okay, and this is where it gets really juicy for a DM, right? Because these aren't just dusty historical facts. They had world-changing impacts. The article points to huge events like the Time of Troubles.
Oh yeah, when the gods were literally forced to walk the earth. Imagine that. Divine magic went haywire.
Chaos.
Total chaos. It fundamentally reshaped the pantheons, changed how mortals understood their gods, and left divine power vulnerable, walking around in physical form. Crazy stuff.
And then there was the spell plague.
Right, another massive one. An absolute cosmic disaster that basically tore the fabric of magic itself. Annihilated whole kingdoms, rewrote the laws of magic in places, and left the land itself infused with this unpredictable, wild, magical energy.
And then, more recently, you had the Sundering, which again, physically changed continents, brought some things back that were lost in the spell plague, but also introduced new uncertainties.
And this brings up such a crucial point the article makes. These aren't just history lessons for the players to learn. They actively shape the present day in your campaign.
How so? Give me an example.
Well, the article gives practical ones. Like, a crumbling ruin your players find might hold relics from the ancient Shun Imperium. Or a local superstition or warning might actually be folklore shaped by wars from thousands of years back.
Or that seemingly innocent village cult
Could secretly be worshipping dead gods from before the Time of Troubles.
Exactly. So that random cave isn't just a cave anymore. Maybe it's a scar left by the spell plague, still pulsating with wild magic.
Or that dusty old tomb might contain an artifact that was physically touched by a god walking the earth during the Troubles.
Precisely. Faerûn rewards that kind of curiosity. The article suggests that, those footnotes in the lore books or throwaway lines you read somewhere, they could become seeds for entire campaigns.
Like a prophecy hidden in a folk song.
Or an artifact with forgotten dangerous powers, or a cult trying to resurrect some ancient entity. It all springs from digging into these buried layers.
And speaking of gods, the article is really clear that the divine presence isn't subtle in the realms. It's not abstract. No, definitely not. What's fascinating and kind of central to the realms is how active and impactful the gods are. They literally walk the earth sometimes, they fight wars with each other, they meddle directly in mortal lives.
They're not just distant concepts.
Not at all. They're playing these complex, intricate political games. They have motives, they have favorites, they have long-standing vendettas, ambitions, and all of that ripples down to the material plane.
Which is critical for you as a DM to remember. Divine actions don't just affect temples or priests. They can shake entire villages, start wars, dictate the fate of heroes.
And in the time of Troubles, again, was such a watershed moment. It permanently changed how the gods relate to each other, and it profoundly affected mortal faith. The article even mentions artifacts like the Tablets of Fate.
Oh, yeah.
If those fell into the wrong hands, the consequences would just cascade across the world, shattering.
The article gives some really excellent specific examples of divine drama you can weave in. Like, think about the intense, centuries-long rivalry between Lolth, the cruel drow goddess, and her sort of counterpart, Alistri.
Or the whole mystery surrounding Mystra, the goddess of magic, the weave itself after her multiple deaths and resurrections. What does that mean for magic now? Or Cyric, the Prince of Lies, his rise to power, his madness.
Yeah, and you've got the clear influence of gods like Tyr and Helm on justice and protection. Or the dynamic between Lathander and Aminator over the domain of the sun. Ogma and Daenerys battling over knowledge.
And Kelemvor's role as the judge of the dead, constantly being challenged by those who follow Merkel, the old god of death. It's non-stop drama.
And the article even touches on things like divine champions, the chosen of Mystra, or other gods working behind the scenes, or relics left over from the time of Troubles just waiting to be found.
Cults of Baal, still obsessed with murder and assassination. Joaquin, the goddess of trade, returning and potentially sparking economic wars. Torm's martyrdom becoming a symbol of duty and sacrifice.
Or just gods showing up in disguise, testing mortals.
Exactly. And the looming presence of Ao, the overgod, who rarely interferes but basically sets the cosmic rules. Or prophecies whispered by followers of Savras that everyone's hunting for.
Weaving in even small bits of this divine stuff, secrets, interventions, it adds huge layers of tension, surprise. It makes player actions feel, genuinely connected to something bigger, the celestial stage.
Definitely not just isolated fights in a dungeon.
Okay, so moving from the heavens down to earth, the article really hammers home how regional lore makes every corner of the realms feel distinct.
Absolutely. It's not just different terrain on a map. Each region is its own little, or sometimes big, crucible of history, culture, ongoing conflicts. You've got Waterdeep, this bustling metropolis dripping with intrigue.
Then the Dalelands, more rural, dotted with ancient ruins, constant border skirmishes.
The deadly, untamed jumbles of Chult. Thay, a land totally under the thumb of liches.
And the article makes this really strong argument that focusing your campaign on just one region isn't limiting you at all. It's actually liberating.
It really is. It lets that region's specific flavor, its history, its politics, its unique dangers, its people infuse pretty much every single encounter.
It creates such a strong contrast, too. The kind of political backstabbing and urban heists you'd run in Waterdeep are completely different from the stark survival and tribal conflicts you might find in, say, the Innerok Desert.
Or even smaller places like Baldur's Gate, that port city, or the frozen north of Icewind Dale. They all have their own distinct character, their own local legends and problems.
The source material we looked at has fantastic examples of how different regions naturally lend themselves to different kinds of stories.
Right, like Waterdeep is just perfect for tangled, noble intrigue, elaborate city heists, navigating all the complex relationships swirling around figures like the Open Lord, Laurel Silverhand, or that slippery drow, Varliskal Bainra.
Whereas the Dalelands offer more classic fantasy adventures, exploring ancient ruins, dealing with border feuds, protecting little settlements. Maybe Elminster shows up, or you deal with local lords like Randall Moore.
Chult is pure pulp adventure. Deadly jungle exploration, survival horror with all the undead, quest for forgotten artifacts, maybe bumping into Cinder Sylvain or Artis Cimber.
That gives you that gothic horror necromantic vibe. A whole land oppressed by Sas Tam and his liches. Great for stories about sabotaging dark rituals or maybe sparking a rebellion. And it is all about ruthless merchant guilds, hidden cults manipulating trade, maybe involving figures like Eldrith Jason.
Baldur's Gate, yeah, similar to Waterdeep with urban intrigue, but maybe grittier. Corrupt government, smuggling rings, people disappearing mysteriously. Figures like Duke Ravengard are key there. Cormyr, the Forest Kingdom, that's your classic high fantasy backdrop.
Knights and Dragons.
Totally.
Yeah.
Royal succession plots, clearing out monster nests, escorting nobles, maybe dealing with the legacy of King Azon IV or the powerful royal mage Van Hast.
Icewind Dale. Up in the frozen north, it's all about survival. Harsh climate, scarce resources, perfect for stories about brokering peace between the 10 towns or uncovering ancient evils buried in the ice. You've got the local speakers trying to hold things together.
The Underdark, of course. It's like a whole other world down there. Alien landscapes, complex drow politics, terrifying monsters, fragile alliances. Often revolves around powerful drow houses like the Bainres or famous figures like Dris Do'Urden.
And Silvery Moon. The Gem of the North, center of learning, magic, alliances. Great for campaigns involving arcane research, protecting knowledge from falling into the wrong hands, dealing with magical threats, maybe interacting with someone like Illustrial Silverhand.
It just shows how focusing regionally grounds your campaign. When the player's actions directly impact their specific home region, it just feels more personal. Tied to their heritage, their community, it really deepens their investment.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly and talk about magic itself. The realms have this fundamental structure for how magic works, right?
Yeah, the article gets into the weave, which is essentially the source and fabric of all arcane magic, overseen by Mystra, usually. And it also hints at the darker side, the shadow weave. It's this powerful cosmic force that shapes reality for magic users.
And woven into that are these powerful organizations with their own agendas. You've got the Harpers working in the shadows to fight tyranny.
Then the Red Wizards of Tay, always plotting conquest through necromancy and sheer arcane might. The Zhentarim, that huge network operating in the underworld. Spies, mercenaries, smugglers.
They also have groups like the Arcane Brotherhood up in Luskan, the Spell Guard protecting certain cities or realms, the Artificers of Lanton with their almost technological magic.
And the Sembian Shadow Masters, more cloak and dagger stuff. These groups aren't just names on a page, they are active players. They have rivalries, goals, resources. You can use them as allies, enemies, patrons, quest givers. Adds so much texture.
And the magic isn't just spells, it's artifacts too. Things with real history, real legacy. The article mentions stuff like the Nether Scrolls fragments of ancient potent magic, or the Crown of Horns.
Right, and these aren't just +1 swords. They come with history, baggage, often a steep price. Finding one isn't just a power-up, it's potentially kicking a hornet's nest.
And other big magical elements, like the Mythal Fields, those ancient elven magical wards, or the incredible Faerûn skyships sailing through the air, or the unique magic tied to lost empires like a Mascar.
Yeah, these provide built-in mysteries, inherent dangers, and opportunities that go way beyond just finding a more powerful spell. It turns discovering a magical place or item into a plot hook in itself.
You're not just finding a tool, you're uncovering history, maybe waking something up, or drawing unwanted attention from powers who know what that thing really is.
Speaking of powerful figures, the realms are absolutely jam-packed with famous, iconic characters.
Oh yeah, where do you even start? Elminster, obviously, the sort of quintessential wise, sometimes meddling archmage.
Dris Do'Urden, the legendary drow hero, challenging all the stereotypes. Volo Gidarm, the eccentric, maybe slightly unreliable travel writer. Sas Tam, the terrifying Lich Lord of Say we mentioned.
Laurel Silverhand, running Waterdeep, powerful former chosen. The beloved, slightly unhinged duo of Minsk and Boo.
Can't forget Minsk and Boo, Illustrial Silverhand, another incredibly powerful chosen, ruler of Silver Moon. Artemis Untrary, Drist's deadly, complicated rival. Kelbin Blackstaff Aronson, the late great archmage of Waterdeep.
Larlock, maybe the most powerful lich still around. Geological Banray, the charismatic, unpredictable draw mercenary leader. And Hallister Blackcloak, the completely mad mage ruling Undermountain. The list goes on.
And these characters, they're like living parts of the world's fabric. Their actions, even just their reputations, shape how people react, what expectations are. A rumor that Elminster is sniffing around that causes ripples.
Drizzt showing up could inspire hope in some or provoke fear and prejudice in others. And Volo's guides, notoriously leading adventurers into more trouble than they bargained for.
Yeah. The article suggests using them smartly, though. Not necessarily as the main characters of the story, more like flavor. Context, maybe they show up for a cameo, give a quest, act as a rival, or manipulate things from behind the scenes.
Getting a letter signed by Illustrial Silverhand, or having a tense negotiation with Jarlaxle Bingra that makes a quest feel instantly legitimate, deeply tied into the wider world.
But it cautions, and this is important, don't use them as a deus ex machina.
Yeah.
Having Elminster swoop in and save the party.
Right, that cheapens the player's achievement.
Exactly. Frame them as powerful forces, interesting people whose paths might cross the players. They can challenge them, offer unique opportunities, but ultimately, the players need to be the heroes of their story.
Their presence can also be inspirational, right? Seeing these legendary figures operate might challenge the players to think about their own legacy, how they can make their mark on the realms.
Definitely. Pushes them to carve out their own legends.
Okay, so we've got all this amazing deep lore, mountains of it. How do DMs actually practically get this into their game sessions without it feeling like, a boring history lecture?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The article gives some really solid practical advice here, and the biggest one is, start small. You absolutely do not need to memorize the entire timeline of Faerûn. Just pick one or two little elements that intrigue you. Maybe it's a specific god symbol the players keep seeing, or the tragic backstory of a local ruin they explore, or even just the name of a legendary NPC dropped casually by an innkeeper.
Just weave these little details into the sessions naturally. Let the player's own curiosity drive it. If they latch onto something, if they ask about that symbol or want to know more about that ruin, then you can maybe dig a little deeper into that specific thread.
Exactly. Avoid the dreaded info dump at all costs. Lore works best when it's discovered through player action.
Like investigating that ruin leads them to a clue.
Researching that symbol in a dusty library reveals a hidden cult. Talking to locals about that legendary name uncovers a forgotten connection. Let the world unfold through interaction and exploration, not just you telling them stuff. Over time, those layers build up and become part of the ongoing plot.
Okay, and this leads to something the article really emphasizes, which feels, well, quite freeing, actually.
Yeah.
Customizing canon.
Yes. This is probably the most important takeaway for a lot of DMs, I think. The published lore for the Forgotten Realms is immense. It's sometimes contradictory, it can feel overwhelming.
Definitely.
But the article stresses, and this is key, it's explicitly meant to be a foundation, not a prison. You are actively encouraged to bend it, twist it, reframe it to fit the specific story you and your players want to tell at your table.
Okay, how? What are some ways you can do that?
Well, the article lists a bunch. You could create alternate timelines. What if the time of troubles ended differently? You could blend elements from different regions together, maybe rename some gods, or invent new local deities that fit your area better.
Use lost NPCs from older editions that maybe haven't shown up recently.
Totally. Or take a minor magic item from the lore and make it into a huge campaign-defining artifact in your game. Establish your own secret societies or factions. Change who's in charge in a major city.
Flesh out areas that the official books barely touch on.
Yeah.
There are lots of those.
Huge unexplored areas. Use what-if scenarios based on big historical turning points. Reimagine published adventures, swap out the villain, change the goal, or position your player characters directly in relation to famous lore figures. Maybe one is a descendant or swore an oath against one, gives them an instant personal stake.
The source really makes the point that this kind of personalization, it adds freshness, it adds genuine surprise, even for players who think they know the realms inside out.
And it creates massive player buy-in because it becomes their unique version of the Forgotten Realms. Their actions genuinely shape this version of the world.
It stops feeling like you're just playing in someone else's sandbox.
Right, and starts feeling like you're building your own awesome sandcastle, but on this incredibly rich, solid foundation that the Realms provides. The history and sheer scope actually make it super resilient to creative changes. It welcomes it.
Okay, finally, the article wraps up with some helpful pointers on tools and resources for DMs wanting to dive deeper.
Yeah, and it's crucial to remember, mastery isn't about memorizing everything. It's knowing where to look and knowing how to adapt what you find.
So what does it recommend?
Well, Core campaign guides are obviously essential starting points, getting that overview of the setting, the major players, the different eras.
Then there are the more specialized books, like the old Volos guides that focused on specific cities, or books like Lost Empires of Faerûn. Those give you incredible depth if you want to really focus on a particular area or theme.
The novels set in the realms, the Driz books, the Elminster series, the Sundering novels, they're fantastic for just soaking up the atmosphere.
Just getting the feel of the place.
Exactly. How the world feels, how characters talk and interact. They really bring the lore to life narratively.
Online resources too, right? Wikis, fan sites.
Oh, indispensable.
Ah.
The Forgotten Realms wiki, places like the Candlekeep forums online, invaluable for quick lookups, checking a timeline, finding an obscure detail you need right now. And good maps. Can't forget maps. Like those amazing ones by Mike Schley. Crucial for visualizing journeys and scale.
And community tools.
Yeah.
Like Reddit or Discord.
Yeah, don't underestimate those. Places like the Our Forgotten Realms subreddit or various Discord channels dedicated to the setting. Great places to ask other DMs for advice, brainstorm plot hooks, just get a second opinion from people who are passionate about this stuff.
The article's main point seems to be, find the resources that work for you. The ones you'll actually use consistently to help you weave this stuff into your game effectively.
Exactly. It's about finding your preferred toolkit.
So, okay, pulling all these different threads together, it's clear the Forgotten Realms offers this immense, maybe almost overwhelming depth and flexibility.
But used thoughtfully, even just sprinkling in small details, this rich lore can really elevate your campaigns. Take them from feeling like generic fantasy adventures into something truly unique, memorable, and unforgettable for your players.
It's that living narrative, that tapestry you mentioned, where every choice the players make, every little discovery adds another thread.
And yeah, a big shout out again to LitRPG Reads and Paul Bello for putting together such an insightful article, really practical stuff. For any DM who's curious about getting more out of the realms, it's a fine piece of work.
Absolutely. A great reminder that beneath the surface of every ruin, every dusty old book in the game world, there's always more story waiting to be found and brought to life at your table.
Which kind of leads us to a final thought, maybe a little provocative question for you, the listener, to chew on after this deep dive.
Go on.
How will you specifically use the secrets of Faerûn, whether it's some grand cosmic event or just a tiny local legend, to challenge your players and maybe help them make their own indelible mark on the realms? What ancient secret are you going to whisper next session?
Ooh, I like that. And yeah, we would genuinely love to hear about your own favorite Forgotten Realms moments. Maybe legendary characters you've used in cool ways or clever storytelling tips you've discovered. Share them in the comments or wherever you engage with the show.